Today's game features the legendary American Grandmaster Bobby Fischer, a chess prodigy known for his deep calculations, ruthless precision, and uncompromising style. Facing him is Miroslav Filip, a strong grandmaster from Czechoslovakia, renowned for his solid, resilient play and sharp tactical vision. Two brilliant minds meet across the board. Let's see how this battle unfolds. Today we dive into an exciting battle. Starting with white opening the game with pawn to b3, black responds with pawn to d5. White develops the bishop with bishop to b2. Black brings out the knight with knight to f6. White continues with knight to f3. Black strengthens the center with pawn to e6. White plays pawn to g3, preparing the fianchetto. Black brings out the bishop with bishop to e7. White castles kingside. Black also castles kingside. Black pushes pawn to c5, gaining space. White challenges the center with pawn to c4. Black develops knight to c6. White captures with pawn takes d5 point. Black captures back with knight takes d5. White plays knight to c3, hitting the knight. Black calmly develops bishop to f6. White positions the queen with queen to c1. Black pushes pawn to b6, defending. White continues with knight to d5, attacking. Black captures with pawn takes knight on d5. White strikes back with pawn to d4. Black places the bishop on a6, eyeing the king's position. White centralizes the rook with rook to e1. Black advances knight to d4, attacking the queen. White responds with bishop takes knight on d4. Black recaptures with pawn takes bishop on d4. White jumps forward with queen to a3, hitting the weak pawn. Black defends with bishop to b7. White brings the rook into play with rook to d1. Black develops bishop to e7. White repositions the queen to a4. Black responds with queen to e8. White moves queen to d4, gaining a strong central post. Black develops rook to c8. White stabilizes the queen with queen to f4. Black protects the bishop with bishop to f6. White jumps with knight to d4, attacking aggressively. Black responds with bishop to e5. White retreats queen to e3. Black pushes pawn to g6, trying to hold. White hops knight to b5, hitting the c7 square. Black defends with queen to b5. White grabs the open file with rook to e5. Black counters by attacking the queen with rook to e8. White saves the queen with queen to b2. Black piles pressure with rook to c5. White advances pawn to h4. Black follows with rook to c8. White continues with pawn to e3, supporting the center. Black pushes pawn to h5, aggressive on the king side. White plays pawn to a3, preparing to expand. Black plays king to h7, getting out of the danger zone. White brings the bishop to d5, increasing tension. Black tries to swap with bishop takes bishop on d5. White recaptures with rook takes bishop on d5. Black throws in queen to e4, attacking multiple pieces. White calmly plays rook to d8, lining up the threat. Black desperately tries queen to f3. White now marches king to h2, sidestepping any threats. Black tries rook to c4, setting up traps. White fires rook to d7, commanding the 7th rank. Black pushes pawn to g5, trying to complicate. White reinforces with rook to f8. Black tries king to g6, stepping closer. White delivers check with rook to g8. Black runs with king to h7. White brings the rook closer with rook to g5. Black answers with rook to d5, trying to defend. White lines up rook to d5. Black tries to escape with rook to f5. White plays queen to e2, bringing more threats. Black tries to counter with queen to g6. White brings rook to f6, pinning everything. Black captures with queen, takes f6. And finally, White delivers checkmate with queen takes pawn on h5. Checkmate.